She's number
very
one.
Complicated. That's right. No one's going to talk. They have nothing to say. They're so fucking tired of each other
Three,
at this point. They're like,
two.
done. Oh, hi. I'm Krista. How are you?
Hi, Krista. I'm the thoughtful Contrarian, and I'm okay. Thanks a lot.
I'm well. I'm a big fan. I follow you on Twitter.
Oh, it's so good to meet you.
I'm not on Twitter. I think statements that can be made using only 140 characters aren't worth reading. And yes, I know that this statement is even shorter than a tweet.
Sarah Silverman, going dark and light and everything, and I smile back.
I don't understand all of this.
What made you have to do this movie?
Well, I got sent the book years ago, 5 years ago.
Ah, it's a movie promo. I thought they were just awkwardly commenting on each other's smiles.
And I read it, which is not an easy thing for me. I'm a very labored, very slow reader,
I'm not surprised.
but thorough.
I am surprised. After this, they talk about how she got to star in I Smile Back, have a chat about mutual friends, etc. But that's not the point of this video, so I'll skip it. Except for this statement made by Sarah Silverman after they talked about her role's addiction and depression problem.
I think that depression and addiction is actually a suburban epidemic that hasn't really been explored very much.
Oh, it has. A quick Google search might help. If you search for suburban addiction, we get almost 800,000 links. Most of them refer to news articles. However, if you search for something more specific and scientific, say addiction and socio-economic status, we get about 450,000 links. I'll link these two studies in the description of the video if you are interested in the subject, but that's not the point of this video either.
I'm a very labored, very slow reader, but thorough.
Then the issue of being in college comes up.
Big grassy campuses and this like microcosm of a working world. And
A microcosm of the working world that is so sheltered from reality that many college graduates nowadays tend to have problems coping with the world outside of university. And there we have the issue of some comedians not performing on college campuses anymore.
I have been fascinated by this Bill Maher that I saw talking about
with
how...
the woman who wrote that piece on The Atlantic.
Yes.
Caitlin Flanagan.
There's a lot of gray matter for me in this because I didn't agree with everything they were saying. Well, I watched that episode.
Looks like a lie, but that's my personal impression and I'll judge her on the basis of what she's saying.
To a degree, everyone's gonna be offended by something, so you can't just decide on your material based on not offending anyone. But I do think it's important as a comedian, as a human, to change with the times, to change with new information. I don't think there's anything wrong with changing with the times. I think it's a sign of being old when you are put off by that.
So that's her impression of what the interview was about.
When I read your article, I said, oh my gosh, this is the person who's going to continue this discussion. I didn't start, some other people did. I've mentioned it before about how college kids have no sense of humor. Why are the college students so politically correct?
Why they're so politically correct now? Well, they're the inheritors of 30 years of identity politics, and that's part of the problem.
What is that?
That means that, you know, instead of saying we all have general principles by which we live and seek to sort of understand our lives, that I'm going to stand up for the feminist cause, I'm going to stand up for a particular racial or ethnic cause, and I'm going to fiercely guard that and completely stand on the side of that issue.
Tribal.
I understand why activists have a tendency to be focused on very particular issues. That's what activism is. And that's why I prefer dealing with universal ideas non-ideologically. University should teach critically analyzing ideas instead of just promoting some of them.
Our idea, you and I, of college is outdated. We thought it was an institution where you learn and explore, and it's really all about keeping the kids paying the tuition.
It is. It's become a country club. That's sort of an immoral aspect of it as well. They kind of lure these kids in with their wonderful gyms and their farm-to-table dining and their idiot, politically correct sort of, you know, humanities curriculum. And then the kids end up with these staggering debts that they have to somehow pay off. When we were young, I grew up in Berkeley, and, I saw, my father was a college professor, the kids who had, really progressive ideas, they had skin in the game. They were getting estranged from their parents. They were leaving school. They were eating kind of brown rice in apartments around Berkeley. They were paying a tremendous personal cost for these political beliefs. But nowadays, these kids, mom and dad write huge checks. They're extremely privileged, they're extremely pampered, and they run around complaining that they're the victim of these microaggressions.
Right. Yes. They need trigger warnings in case someone says something awful. You know who else doesn't care about them? Doctors Without Borders. Because they're actually doing something to help the world. Yeah.
Right.
Not just sitting on the internet like, virtual vigilantes pointing out the bad person.
Now, I have a disagreement with Bill Maher here, because that's what I do. There are people that deal with the really big injustices, and usually they don't need to do this in Western representative democracies. Then there are people that deal with first world problems. I think holding the second group to the first group standards is unfair. A minor injustice is still an injustice. The problem with the social justice movement is that they blow those minor injustices out of proportion. They present their issues as if they were absolutely the worst thing in the world, and they present simple answers. Never trust a simple answer.
Exactly. And again, I don't hold them responsible. It's the nature of youth that you don't know much yet.
Right.
But the people who teach there should be instructing them that they should have free speech, they should have an ability to inquire, they should be able to ask any question, they should be able to write anything and subject themselves to the academic or rigorous intellectual discipline, and that's largely gone.
I totally agree. That's where HBO's upload of the interview ends. In order to be fair to Sarah Silverman, I don't want to skip any relevant parts, so I'm afraid we'll need to listen for 2 minutes.
It's interesting because you talk about how, these kids come and they audition. This is a big thing because if you get the gig, you make a lot of money. You go from college to college to college. And of course, they never hire the ones who are the funniest.
Right.
One guy did a routine about a sassy black friend. And the audience loved it.
Loved it.
And the people who were deciding whether to hire said, no, that wouldn't work for us. That's a stereotype,
Well,
sassy
everyone was
black
going
friend.
crazy. They thought it was hysterical. There were quite a few African-American young women in the crowd who thought it was really hilarious. And then these two white girls sitting next to me said, oh, we would never. And I said, why not? And they said, because we're a very forward-thinking school. And that's perpetuating a stereotype. So, but I don't think that it's a war we have to worry about because we've already lost the war.
Right.
And I think that the culture war is over, the other side won, and at this point free speech is nothing more than a nuisance.
Yeah, and it gets worse. It was in the news this week that the University of New Hampshire, this sounds like a joke, like a parody on what we're talking about, but they're deadly serious, came up with a bias-free language guide. Can't say senior citizens anymore. Senior citizens was
that
itself.
That was a good thing, right?
Right. Now you have to say people of advanced age. Like, that makes a difference. Poverty-stricken. No good. Experiencing poverty. What the hell's that? Rich. Can't say rich. Person of material wealth. This obese. Again, obese was the nice word.
Right, now what?
People of size.
Okay.
He's making this up.
I'm not making this up. Tomboy. Gender non-conforming. Foreigner. Out. International people. Homosexual, same gender loving. I mean...
This is literally the only moment in the entire interview where they are discussing politically correct vocabulary. So when Sarah Silverman summarizes the interview with,
It's a sign of being old when you are put off by that.
she's lying about having watched it or purposely misrepresenting its content. Having read the article might have helped too, although...
I'm a very labored, very slow reader.
This is unbearably arrogant of me. I know that.
I caught myself a few years ago fighting gay. I say gay, like that's so gay. I just say gay. I have gay friends. I don't mean it like gay. I mean it like it's gay, like it's lame. And then I stopped myself and said, what am I fighting? I have become the guy from 50 years ago who said, I say colored, I have colored friends. It's not hard to change with the times. And I think it's important. And when you have new information and you become more aware of the world around you, you can change. I don't say that things are gay anymore if I think they're lame. I don't even think about it. It didn't take long to get used to it.
I agree with that. It's not a bad thing to think about how you are using words, but it is a bad thing for universities to force people to do that. I have no issue with them offering sensitivity classes or something. That's fine, as long as they aren't mandatory. But they very often are. Language is changing all the time, but forcing it to change is an authoritarian act. Because if you control how people talk, you control how they think. By the way, I've linked the Wikipedia entry of the word gay and its changing meanings in the last 100 years in the description underneath the video.
You must lie upon the daisies and discourse in novel phrases of your complicated state of mind. The meaning doesn't matter if it's only idle chatter of a transcendental kind.
And to that effect, I think you have to listen to the college-aged because they lead the revolution. They're pretty much always on the right side of history.
Definitely not. I'm not anti-education, quite the opposite. And I'm not denying that radical movements within university have had some positive effects on society overall. But universities have always been the most fruitful place for an authoritarian regime to plant their ideas in people's heads. Because if you manage to influence the future elites when they are young, you win. The National Socialists did that in Germany, the Soviets did it in Russia, and the Cultural Revolution, ignorantly praised by left-wing students all over the world, is probably the best example of a despot using young to-be intellectuals as tools.
In Sichuan, Luo Shifa, the party secretary who'd helped his village through the famine, was denounced.
I
didn't expect the Cultural Revolution would affect me. Why should it? I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, and always had the support of the people. At the denunciation meeting, they slapped my face and forced me to kneel down. Kneeling on hot charcoal and broken glass was almost a daily routine.
Our headmaster had been really good to us, but even he couldn't escape. We didn't hate him personally, but he represented bourgeois values, so we had to attack him.
This is the danger of ideological supremacy, of the will to control people's minds, of forcing society to change, of being bedfellows with authority, because you are convinced that you are serving the ultimate good, that you are on the right side of history. This is why it's essential for universities to be places of critical thinking rather than ideological smithies. This is why politically correct policing is wrong.
The thing that bums me out about colleges sometimes is that it's a sea of iPhones, and because comedy is something where you're connecting, it's a bummer because you just end up saying your jokes to a sea of empty vessels through which Facebook expresses itself.
I would have put it in less spiritual words, but I agree.
How about this memory card?
Yeah.
Exactly. Use it.
If you're anxious for to shine in the high aesthetic line as a man of culture rare, you must get up all the germs of the transcendental terms and plant them everywhere. You must lie upon the daisies and discourse in novel phrases of your complicated state of mind. The meaning doesn't matter if it's only idle chatter of a transcendental kind. And everyone will say, as you walk your mystic way, If this young man expresses himself in terms too deep for me, why, what a very singularly deep young man this deep young man must be.